Here is that we can.
Actually, I can't quite reach my shoulder.
Can do.
Perfect.
You know, because I was trying to find something that I could, you know, be able to give out to you know, fans and followers and everything, and it was like a challenge going to be actually really sweet thing. Okay. I am happy that she opened it. Oh my goodness. That is awesome. Follow along. I have Tourette's syndrome, but it doesn't have me. That is sweet. No, I love it. That's awesome. And it's a decent picture of me too. Hi, my name is Craig, and I'm a police officer in the state of Minnesota. So I was born and raised in Minnesota. I guess I had what you would call a kind of a classic Midwest childhood growing up. Grew up on a hobby farm, so we always had cows, pigs, and chickens, along with dogs and cats, and did everything outside. And there was always hunting and fishing, and you know, just exploring outside. You know, it was one of those things that you never told your parents you were bored, because they would find something for you to do, and that's usually something you didn't want to do.
Of the connexes.
Yep.
Like,
so even at a young age, I knew I wanted to be a cop. I really can't even like pinpoint why. It's just like a feeling that I had. You know, seeing police on the street, or you know, police officers, you know, coming into the school and talking about DARE. There's just something about it that I felt like I was called to it. You know, and as a small child, I didn't, you know, think it was a calling at that point. But you know, now that I look back on it, it was just a feeling that I had, like that's the job I was going to do. I always wanted to help people, and I just think, you know, seeing police officers as people that I can go to for help, that's something that kind of drove me to wanting to be a police officer. So as most of you have probably seen, I make a little bit of extra noises and move around. I have what's called Tourettes Syndrome. Tourettes Syndrome is a neurological disorder that involves repetitive physical movements and vocalizations. And for me, it's a genetic disorder, and so for me, I got it from my dad's side of the family. So when I started exhibiting symptoms or tics, they knew exactly what it was. So they weren't worried about it. They didn't freak out about it. So that guy has a warrant. Sorry. So when I started exhibiting symptoms or tics, you know, my parents didn't freak out. They weren't concerned or worried or anything, because it was so prevalent in my dad's side of the family. They knew exactly what it was. So my parents told me, like, hey, you have Tourette's syndrome, without really explaining to me what Tourette's syndrome was. I knew I made movements and noises, but never really put that together with it being Tourette's syndrome.
Hi, Dexter.
There's a small part where I think Tourette's syndrome, or having Tourette's syndrome, actually kind of helps establish rapport with people. You know, I've had individuals where, you know, the call I'm on, they're very upset. They're not happy. They're not in a good mood, and you know, they're very forward in how they're asking me, like, what's wrong with me. And when I let them know, it's like, hey, I just got Tourette's syndrome. They actually apologize, and their level of emotion comes down.
So the first actual memory that I had in regards to my tics was, I was probably about 8 or 9 years old, and I was in the library with my classmates in school. And one of my classmates was looking at me, and she asked, like, why do you blink so much? So to me, that was a shock, because that was my normal. I never knew I was, you know, blinking a lot or doing something that wasn't considered quote unquote normal. You know, another time I was in high school, and I was sitting in class. I don't even remember what class it was, but I wasn't even remotely paying attention. The thing I was doing everything I could not to just scream. And again, at the time, I thought that was normal. I thought everybody dealt with that or had to deal with something like that. I never understood that it was because of Tourette's syndrome. You know, at that time I was suppressing a tic, but I didn't know I was suppressing a tic. So I mean, it's just kind of the, you know, little things like that. Yeah, like I said, I just still remember that so vividly. You know, and it's like, and then I would always do like how loud of a scream could I get away with without anybody noticing? You know, it's like I would literally be playing a game with myself just so I could let that pressure, that anxiety that builds up when you suppress tics, just to let some of that go so I could, you know, like move on with my day and actually focus on what's going on in school.
The most frequent thing I have to deal with, I guess you could say, is just telling people that I have Tourette's syndrome. A lot of the questions I get asked is, are you okay? What's wrong with you? Do you need some water? Do you have the hiccups? You know, just things like that, because they're aware of, you know, what I'm doing is not their normal. I just let them know, it's like, yep, I have Tourette's syndrome. You know, I make extra movements and noises, and then I just move on. I don't shy away from the question. I'm not embarrassed when people ask me the question, and I think that helps just kind of, you know, just end it there. And if they do have any more questions afterwards, you know, once I feel it's appropriate to answer those questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
It's both a mental and physical pressure. A lot of my tics, most of my tics have a premonitory urge, or I feel when it's going to happen before it happens. So, you know, take for instance my arm tic. I'll feel like a pressure or a tingling or kind of an anxious feeling in my elbow, which is letting me know it's like I'm going to be ticking pretty soon. So I can do the tic, it relieves that pressure, I feel great, but you know, 5-10 seconds later, that pressure's building back up again, and that's Tourette's syndrome. You know, it's like a cough or a sneeze. You know it's coming, you can suppress it, but it takes a lot of focus, and sometimes it hurts. It's the exact same thing with tics.
So, like right now, I have to focus on driving, and then focus on answering your questions and paying attention to that in a detail of some sort. So it's splitting my concentration in two ways, where it really kind of puts my tics on the back burner. And also at the same time, you know, in law enforcement, when I'm driving around town, I'm looking everywhere. Like all that hyper focus just puts my tics on the back burner.
Back in 2018, Officer Daniels, who's a friend of mine, maybe you've heard of him, maybe you haven't, he started his social media career on Vine, and then progressed onto Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And then he also is part of a nonprofit organization called Humanizing the Badge. Like I said, back in 2018, the end of 2018, he approached me and asked me if I'd be willing to start a social media channel, just because, you know, being a police officer with Tourette's syndrome is kind of a unique thing. And I understood that, but I was apprehensive at first. You know, to accept myself and the diagnosis is one thing, but then to put that out on the internet for other people to see was, I mean, honestly, it was scary to me at first. I mean, just but he told me to think about it, and I did. So a couple months later, it was January 2019 now, and I weighed out all the pros and cons in regards to starting a social media channel, and the pros far outweighed the cons. You know, to bring awareness to a disorder that's rarely talked about, and you know, to educate people on what it is, and to just inspire and bring confidence to people that have Tourette's syndrome, to let them know that, you know, they're not alone, and you know, we're all in this together, and we can work through it and overcome so many of the obstacles that happen because of Tourette's syndrome. I agreed to it. So in January of 2019, I started my social media career as Tourettes Cop.
I do get some mean and negative comments every once in a while, but a lot of times it's based off of one small snapshot of a video. You know, so they're drawing conclusions about me as a person and a police officer based off of a 1-minute video. You know, so I can understand a lot of their questions, or a lot of their negative questions, because, you know, they may be ignorant or just uneducated in what Tourette's syndrome is and how it affects people.
So when I started my channels back in January of 2019, the feedback that I got across all platforms was overwhelmingly positive. Just people seeing you know, someone with Tourette's syndrome overcoming their disorder and becoming a police officer was very you know, motivational for them. But then also all the messages and comments I got from parents with kids that have Tourette's syndrome was amazing. You know, a lot of parents, and a lot of comments and the message that I've gotten from parents were a lot of, you know, concern over, you know, what their child would be able to do as they get older with Tourette's syndrome, and seeing somebody in a profession such as law enforcement gave them hope for their child. One of the messages that comes to mind is from a parent who let me know that I inspired her son enough to have the confidence to tell his classroom that he has Tourette's syndrome, and he was able to explain to his classroom what Tourette's syndrome is. Another message I got, it was a message from a fellow police officer, and she was backup to another officer in a traffic stop, and she said the person that the other officer was talking to was, you know, twitching and tweaking out, and the other officer thought he might have possibly been under the influence. She said because of my page, she saw what he was doing as tics and asked him if he had Tourette's syndrome, which he said yes, he did. So she was able to you know, mediate that situation in a positive way just by seeing my posts. And you know, and that's things that I absolutely love, and that's the reason why I continue to do social media. So the goal of my channels is just to continually just spread awareness and education about Tourette's syndrome, and also with the people that have Tourette's syndrome is just to continue to inspire and bring confidence to them. I never want a child or a young adult to ever feel alone in this disorder, or ever be afraid to experience what life has to offer. I'm just gonna leave it at that.